Hello and welcome to another installation of Jennifer Miner Cards videos. Today I will be sharing with you a simple, easy stenciled heart Valentine's Day card that I created using a simple stencil and Tim Holtz distress ink. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So as usual, I began with a quarter sheet of white cardstock. This happens to be Nina Solar White. I had just laid down this, it's called the Glimmer Screen from Tattered Angels, and I have it taped to my craft mat. And then you can see here I've already gotten started using worn lipstick, distress ink, and a circular ink blending tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that directly to the central image of the heart. And now I'm working with festive berries in that same heart. You'll notice as this goes through that the little bit of red ink does get into the other portions, but for me, I actually feel like that adds to the overall look of the card itself. So just work that in. This is a fairly thick stencil, so you have to be fairly aggressive with your color application. And now I'm going to work on the larger heart portion, and I am starting here with tumbled glass, again distress ink. This time I'm using one of the rectangular blocks. This happens to be, my brother made these for me. We just cut some wood to size. He sanded and sealed them, and then I just applied Velcro at the bottom. So we made our own ink blending tools that I use, since I don't typically use them by the handles. So again, here you can see really having to work that ink down into the spaces of the stencil, since it is, these are actually intended to be used with glimmer mist and not this type of application, but I happen to like them for this. And then you can see I just took a peek under my stencil to see how things are looking, working around the edge. And for the most part, I am working to try and keep that blue within the heart itself, kind of more, instead of the whole block, just a corner or a piece of it. I had a tiny piece of tape there that was kind of encroaching into the stencil, just remove that. And again, this stencil has only 2 tiny pieces of tape, so you'll see when I get real serious, I make sure I have a hand on it at all times, just to kind of help it stay in place. It does move, but try to minimize that as much as possible. So here we go. Now I'm working with Broken China, which is one of my all-time favorite blue from the Tim Holtz Ranger Distress Inks. I'm just working a little more depth into that blue heart. And you can see it get a little close to my red heart, which puts a little bit of that blue onto the red that I did previously with Festive Berries. But really, I think it looks great because it gives some really nice shading to it. This was a fairly organic process for me. I had an idea in my mind, and I won't say that it turned out totally different, but it certainly wasn't exactly what I had in mind, although I think it actually looks better than what I kind of set out to create when I started. And now my last blue that I'll be using is kind of more of that deep purple. This is Chipped Sapphire, again, distress ink. And you can see I have my little homemade ink blending tool block. That I'm so grateful for these, because in the long run we made about 20 of those little blocks, and so I didn't have to purchase those. Although now I have to figure out how to get them in circles. So here you can see I've kind of moved my stencil on accident and just got that relined up. That's a really hard thing to do, and I know it's not exactly perfectly lined up, so it's easier if you can keep your stencil and your paper in place, although as evidenced here, not always possible. So really wanted to keep that chipped sapphire very close to the blue heart for the contrast, and just kind of tweaking the red a little bit, went back in with the Festive Berries. And so now I'm going to go ahead and remove my stencil. Oh, not yet. Take that back. I'm going to go ahead and do the worn lipstick on the outside around the heart to give it some definition. And you can see I'm kind of fiddling again with that stencil. I should have put a little more adhesive on it to keep it in place. But sometimes this is how happy accidents happen. You think you have something one way and it turns out a different way. So again, just working that worn lipstick around the outer edge. This stage, I go ahead and pull that off. And then I'm going to go ahead and add Festive Berries Distress Ink around the edge and really work. One of the things I think that anybody, and maybe if you're new to distress inks or just trying some different things, the key for me is take time to build up your depth of color. You'll see work on these a lot and come back over many, many times. And that gives you the ability to build kind of that subtle color transition, more of an ombre effect that's very subtle. So it takes a little bit of patience and certainly some practice. But if you want to get some of those very distinct color shading variations where it goes from one color to another significantly, that's really how you accomplish that, is adding layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, subtly, 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 building your color up. And here I'm just adding more Festive Berries, focusing right on the edge. That's why I've picked that up, so it gives it a more distinct line. And now I've decided to go ahead and add a little bit of chipped sapphire on the very edge. This is a really intense color, and it would be very easy to make that overpowering, but I just wanted to add a little more depth. So it's kind of a fairly light application of this chipped sapphire color around the edge. And that is that. So now I decided I wanted to have the heart a little more defined. So I'm taking a Tim Holtz Distress Marker in Festive Berries, and I went ahead and drew a line around the heart itself, just to kind of give it a little more definition. And then I decided that was a little too much definition. So I'm going to go ahead and watercolor with Festive Berries. You can see I've kind of smushed it onto my craft pad there, just to make that a little more subtle, a little softer, because I felt like it was too intense, too dark. And so just painting over that with an aqua paintbrush, and you can use that actual paintbrush for that. Just kind of working right over it, moving the color. Again, this is just plain cardstock and not watercolor, so it doesn't work as well as a watercolor paper would, but I still was pretty happy with that. I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to go ahead here. You can see I'm adding Glossy Accents, another awesome Ranger product. Use it all the time. So what I did was I just put a giant blob in the middle of my heart because I knew I was going to need a significant amount, and then I'm just using the tip to kind of push that adhesive where I wanted on the heart. This kind of gave me a little more control to come just up to the line. And there are a couple of places where I add a tiny bit, but mostly I just use that central blob, technical term there, in the middle of the heart. And then I'm adding a little bit of Broken China Distress Stickles just as a tiny accent. There's 3 little circular shapes within the stencil that I added these, and I actually should have waited. You'll see I smudged these, so I have to redo them. And now I am using my old school stamp from a jig and this really cute stamp. And so to use the stamp from a jig, you have a clear piece of plastic and then kind of that corner setter piece. So you ink up your stamp, line it up on the acrylic and the corner, you can see there. And then what that allows you to do, you can see where the stamp will go, line that up on the card first, then place the corner setting piece. Just when you have it right where you want it, take out that acrylic plastic piece, re-ink the stamp, line it up with the corner stamp, and it's right where you want it. A really helpful tool that I should probably use more of. So again, here you can see I said I should have waited to do my distress stickles, so I went ahead and re-added those back where they were. And then my last step here are to add just a couple of little gems. The royal blue are from Mark Richards, and I'm just going to add one at the base. and then one on the top. There you go. And then a teeny tiny 2mm crystal one. This particular gem is from Hero Arts. And just place that up there. And voila! Finished with the background. Mount this to 2 sheets of cardstock, and then my final size is going to be a 5x7. And that's it for today's card. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful day stamping out there.